Welcome to your 5th Mugshots lesson, and guess what? The last Mugshots lesson of set number 1. Today, I'm really excited because we're going to be learning my favorite comma rule, so I hope that you're excited too. As a reminder, the expectation for these lessons is that you are taking notes in your notebook, and it should be a notebook dedicated to English class. That way, when you start to write, you can go back and look at the notes that you've taken on your grammar lessons easily. Also, at the end of each lesson, there's going to be a sentence exercise, so make sure that you write down the sentence exercise in your notebook and correct it to the best of your ability. But don't be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are how we learn, and if you're ever confused about something, make sure that you ask your teacher to explain it to you in a different way. I guarantee that they'd be happy to do so. Are you ready? No. Are you actually ready? Do a little drum roll at home. We are about to go over the best comma rule of them all. But wait! Before we start, there's something that I need to warn you about before you embark on this journey with me. You see, we are at war. There are some in the grammar community who will try to tell you that the following comma rule is optional or even I'm sorry. I'm feeling a little sick here. They'll try to tell you that it's... Get it together, Miss Hands. They will try to tell you that this comma rule is outdated. I'm here to tell you that that is a bold-faced lie. Okay? Comma rule number 6 is absolutely necessary and absolutely current. You must use it and you must remember it. If anybody ever in your life tries to tell you otherwise, you stand up for comma rule number 6. You stand up for what is right. This, my friends, is a fight worth fighting. Now, without further ado, the best comma rule of them all. Comma rule number 6. Comma rule number 6 states that you must use a comma between all items in a series. A series is a list or a group of 3 or more things that have the same function in a sentence. So a list of anything, a list of objects, a list of food, a list of actions, a list of thoughts, a list of grammar traders who say that this next part is not necessary or is even outdated. Remember that they're lying. This next part is the controversial one. The Oxford comma. Use an Oxford comma, which is a comma that comes before a conjunction. Remember, conjunctions are those fanboys? In this case, the conjunction is usually going to be and or. There will be some who will tell you that the Oxford comma is optional, or that it's not necessary. I'm looking at you, journalists. I'm looking at you. And I, again, will remind you that they are liars. This is necessary, and you absolutely must use it anytime you have a list of 3 or more items. You must always put a comma before a conjunction. Always. No exceptions. You must do it. Please, I'm begging you. I'm begging you. Just do it. Do it. Seriously. Seriously. It's not optional. Even if people say it's optional, it's not. I'm about to show you why, okay? This is a life or death situation. All right, so to illustrate this, I'm going to paint you 2 pictures. The first is a picture of a utopia, a beautiful, perfect world in which everybody, including journalists, use the Oxford comma anytime they have a list of 3 or more items. In this world, nothing is unnatural. Everything makes sense. In this world, for example, we're going for a walk, and we decide that we're going to go for a walk with our dogs, Grandma, and Grandpa. Grandma, Grandpa, and our dogs. Nothing wrong with that, right? Sounds relaxing. It's nice to get outside. It's nice to take a walk, especially when you're doing remote learning and you're sitting in front of a screen all day. Make sure you get outside with Grandma, Grandpa, and the dogs. But this next picture I'm about to paint for you is of a hellscape that the grammarians who say the Oxford comma is not necessary want our world to look like. And you need to keep that from happening by using the Oxford comma. You see, in this world, if we want to go for a walk, we're going for a walk with our dogs, Grandma and Grandpa. You see that? Do you see that? Do you see how we took the comma, the Oxford comma, the one that people say is unnecessary, we took it out before the and? Suddenly, we're not walking with our dogs, Grandma and Grandpa. Now, we're going for a walk with our dogs who are Grandma and Grandpa. I mean, excuse me, but I think that's a little bit unnatural. I don't mean to get controversial right now, but I prefer my grandparents human. I don't want them to be dogs. I love dogs and I love my grandparents, but I don't think that those two entities should become one. And in order to keep that cursed chimera from coming into existence, we must use the Oxford comma. We must. And don't even get me started on people who just completely ignore all of Rule 6 and don't use any commas between items in a series. If you don't use any commas between items in a series, then suddenly we're committing murder. Jane, for example, Jane enjoys cooking her family and her dog. Well, that's awful. You shouldn't cook your dog. Your dog's a family member, and you definitely shouldn't cook the rest of the human members of your family or your dog-grandparent hybrids. That's cannibalism, even if they are dogs. They're your relatives. So make sure that you separate items in a list with commas so that you're not accidentally committing homicide. All right? So here's some more examples of comma rule number 6, just to really drill this into you that you absolutely need this comma rule. The first one. We bought apples, peaches, and bananas today. So this is a series of words. We have a list of 3 words, specifically 3 fruits. We have apples, peaches, and we have bananas. So, because we have this list, we need to put commas between the items in the list. So we have a comma after apples, and we have a comma after peaches. And that comma after peaches before the and is the Oxford comma that some people will say is unnecessary, but as we learned, it's very necessary unless you want your grandparents to transfigure into dogs, which I don't think they would enjoy very much. So, save lives and use the Oxford comma. Here's another example, because we can list all kinds of things. We don't have to just list words. So in this example, we have this girl, Mary. Mary promised 3 things. She promised that she would be a good girl, that she would not bite her brother, and that she would not climb onto the television. So here, even though the items in the list are longer, it is still a list of 3 things. But specifically, it's a list of 3 clauses. So we have the first thing, that she would be a good girl. We have the second thing, she would not bite her brother. And we have the third thing, that she would not climb onto the television. Sounds like a lot of promises that Mary is making. I hope that she does well with them. But regardless, if she's making these promises and she's listing them all out for us, we need to separate them with commas. So we have to have that comma after girl, and we definitely need that comma after brother, the Oxford comma, even if people say it's not necessary. It is necessary. All right, next example. So in this next example, we have an instructor. This instructor is a little bit disorganized. Imagine that. This instructor, you see, lost his grade book. He has students, parents emailing him left and right saying, oh, you didn't grade the essays. Why isn't Tyler updated? Well, what's he supposed to do? He lost his grade book. He can't update the grades because he doesn't know what they are. So what he's going to do is he's going to look in all kinds of places. He's looking through his briefcase, through his desk, and around the office for this lost grade book. So here, we still have a list. It's just a list of phrases. The items in this list, or the phrases in this list, are through his briefcase, through his desk, and around the office. So because we're listing 3 things, we need to have commas separating those things, or in this case, those phrases. So we're going to have a comma after briefcase, and we are going to have a comma after desk and before and. And that, my friends, is the Oxford Common Rule, which, when is it necessary? Always, as we know by now, because we're smart. Speaking of being smart, now it's time for you to put your skills to the test and try out our sentence exercise for today. So, sentence exercise number 5, the last sentence exercise in this set. Throughout history, traveling traders and merchants took home new products such as tea, spices, and fabrics. As a matter of fact, that's one reason civilizations changed. So, how many mistakes are there in this, you might ask? Well, there are a whopping 5 mistakes. 5 mistakes in this sentence, but remember that these sentences are cumulative, which means that the grammar rules that you've learned in previous mugshots lessons might show up as mistakes in this sentence. So write it down, try your best to find and correct all 5 mistakes, and your teacher will go over the sentence with you in class tomorrow.